Welcome back to my channel. My name is Stacey Flowers, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about what I'm thinking and how I'm feeling right now. So if you are interested in that, please keep watching. So first things first, I just want to say thank you guys so much for your patience and your understanding around just all of this stuff. Your emails, your comments, all of that stuff has totally been wonderful and comforting to me during this time, because I am thinking quite a lot and I am feeling quite a lot. Let's dive into it. I did take a couple of notes because I want to make sure that I hit on everything. So the biggest thing that I am thinking about right now and feeling right now is I'm experiencing something called stress alopecia. And I'll pull in some pictures for you guys to see what that looks like. But I'm experiencing stress alopecia. And stress alopecia is essentially when your hair starts to fall out because you're stressed. It's like how men go bald, but their hair never comes back. That happens. But thankfully, at least with the way stress alopecia works for me, when my stress is reduced, then my hair tends to come back in. And I know I wear my hair low already, but this is a different level of my hair falling out. So that's the biggest thing that's on my mind right now, which actually really inspired me to go ahead and shoot a video, because you guys know I heal so well through talking out loud, but with so much different stuff going on and moving pieces, I haven't been able to do as much talking and expressing as I usually do. And so that is manifesting itself as stress and ultimately hair loss. And that's probably the biggest thing that's on my mind, and it makes me feel a little bit concerned. I've experienced it before, so I know how to heal it and I know what to do about it. The big thing to do about it is reduce your stress. But the other stuff that's going on is going to be me talking a little bit more about what I think I can do to reduce my stress and some of the decisions I'm going to make to reduce my stress, because it's not fun. It's not something that I want to happen, even though I wear my hair low. So that's the biggest thing that I'm thinking about. The other stuff that is on my mind, the viral pandemic that's going on, is 100% something that I'm thinking about and I'm being mindful of as it relates to my just personal health and well-being, my son's personal health and well-being, work, and different things like that. The global racial unrest, that's definitely something that I'm thinking about. These two things have dramatically impacted my business, and so there is a lot of stress that comes with that. Oh, I almost got emotional there. Hold on. There is a lot. This is why I like doing these videos. There's a lot of stress that comes with that as it relates to how it's impacting my business, how it's impacting my life. Then you guys know that I am also in full-blown empty nest syndrome, and I cannot emphasize this enough, because it is a real thing to transition your child into adulthood. This is, it is unfamiliar territory for me, and it is very, very challenging to be the mother of an adult child. And you guys know last year this time I was crying about this time coming, so I'm now in it. So just all the emotions, just every single one of them. It's empty nest syndrome. It's a real thing, and it's a very intense experience to go through. And I'm also thinking about entrepreneurship and the way that my business has shifted as it's related to me being in empty nest syndrome, the viral pandemic, and the global racial unrest. These are three factors that are deeply impacting my business. And so daily, these are the things that are on my mind, and in them being on my mind, it's I'm having to make really big decisions and really hard decisions that I think maybe normally under normal situations people would have a year or two or whatever to be able to make these decisions, and I'm having to make them in weeks or months. And so for example, with entrepreneurship, you guys know a couple of months ago I talked about how I expanded my team to 5 people, or I think it was 4 people at the time, but then I went up to 5, and then some things happened and it was solid at 4. And even inside of the 6 months my company has grown to that many people working with me. I actually had to fire someone, and firing someone is not an easy thing to do. That was a very difficult thing for me to do, and not fire them as it's related to any of the other stress, but just fire them as it relates to them being able to do their job within my company. That was a very, that's an emotionally taxing thing to do. I think I had mentioned in another video that I closed the coaching portion of my business, which is essentially shutting down a revenue stream. And I made that decision before the pandemic happened. And, you know, with the intent of moving into a different revenue stream. And, you know, the pandemic happened and that impacted my revenue earning as it relates to speaking. And so, you know, with coaching being closed, that limits the amount of money that's coming in. It's like the amount of money that's coming in is limited. And I also have these new team members. So there was just a lot of like moving pieces. And because my business is the thing that I get to manage and I get to decide what to do with, I have the most decision-making power of all the other stuff that's going on. That is probably the bulk of my stress, is just making sure that I'm of sound mind when I'm making decisions about what to do in my company next, so that I can continue to be profitable, so that I can continue to entrepreneur during this time. And so with the viral pandemic, I've obviously had to shift things as it relates to me going to go do speaking engagements in person. Thankfully, most of my clients have transitioned their conferences to virtual conferences, and I'm still able to execute on those, and I've been able to find new conferences to be able to speak at, so that revenue stream still is maintained. But it is a very hard thing to make that kind of a pivot from preparing myself to go speak live and in person to preparing myself to deliver the same great value but digitally. And so even some of the changes that I've had to make in my company so that I can deliver a great digital experience is intense. It's like, oh, okay, you're gonna hire a full-blown videographer now, and you're gonna rent studio space, and you're gonna like, these are choices that like I wouldn't have thought that I would be making at this stage in my company in order to be able to execute my products and services successfully. But yet I'm still making them, and it's intense. It's a very intense thing. I am very grateful that I do have the privilege to be able to sort of do those things, but make no mistake about it, it is a very challenging pivot. And then I think another challenging pivot in my business that I'm going through is expanding the topics that I'm open to speaking about. With the global racial unrest that is happening, I've been getting a lot more requests to speak about equity and diversity and injustices. And initially I was very resistant to add my voice to an already very noisy conversation, because I just didn't want to be more noise. And after much consideration, I decided to begin to add that as something that I speak about. But to make that decision is a very difficult pivot, and you know, there's some weight to it, and there's intensity to it, and it's hard. It's a very hard thing. Like, I am in an incredible amount of pain as it relates to my community, as it relates to some of the fears that I have around my son and myself and the possibilities. There's an incredible amount of pain. There's also an incredible amount of hope, but there's also like, it is not lost on me what is happening in my community, and that weighs on me heavily. And so being someone who's standing up to be a voice inside of this or about this issue is a hard pivot to make, because it's not close to any of what I used to speak about before, but it is within my range of being able to speak about experientially and professionally. And so I'm thinking about that a lot. What are the words and the messages that I need to put together so that I can move the future of my community to a better place, so that there can be more progress for my community and my son's future as it relates to race relations. That's intense. It's a very intense thing. So that has really been on my mind. And as far as how I feel about that, there is a lot of heartbreak, right? Like, it's just very heartbreaking. I'm not going to clean it up. It's just heartbreaking. There's so much more heartbreak than I would have ever imagined. There's so much more heartbreak than I would have ever imagined. I think that's the primary feeling. So then after entrepreneurship, the biggest thing that I'm thinking about and the biggest thing that I'm having feelings about is empty nest syndrome. You know, my son will be a legal adult next year, which means he can get married if he wants to, and that's a big deal. That is a big deal, that I am the mother of an adult human, at least a legal adult human. I'm aware that there is still some mothering and parenting that goes on as he transitions, but man, there's nothing in the world that prepares you for the transition of your child into adulthood. And it's not hard bad like that. It's just new, different, challenging like that. And I'm just like, holy fasolies, I don't know how to feel, answer, do. It's just, my son is an adult. There's a lot that comes up with that. There's a lot that comes up with him being, there's just a lot that comes up with that. And I'm so proud of him. I'm so like, it's a very fascinating thing to watch someone from birth to this age like grow up right before your eyes. Like, you want to blow your mind? Have a kid and watch them grow up. Like, it'll blow your mind. So there's grief in this. Now that I know what grief feels like, there's definitely grief. Grief and pride is probably my two dominant emotions. And I have never been so proud in my life. Man, I'm so proud of him. And I'm just so happy that he's like my son. And like, I'm just so happy that we hit this milestone. Like, you know, he did his graduation. And I remember when he first told me that he was going to graduate on Zoom, I was pissed. I was like, Zoom? You will not be graduating on Zoom. Like, I was so upset. But I was upset because I didn't realize that, you know, for 17 years that inside of me holding on to a dream of my son graduating from high school and transitioning to college, I was also very much nursing a wound of just being pissed off that nobody believed that, well, not nobody, but that specific people didn't believe that the choices that I made for my son were going to result in him making this transition and making it to this point. And so the full realization of this dream was watching him walk across stage. So to not be able to physically see him walk across stage like pissed me off to the highest level of passivity. Like, I was angry. Like, get a therapist, guys. Because I mean, I was pissed. I said, oh, like, I mean, pissed off to the highest level of passivity. But I got through it. And my son graduated, and you know, he's going to college, and he sent me a picture of how he wants his dorm room decorated, and that just, man, I'm just so proud. Like I get to decorate my son's dorm room. It's just very intense. And so a lot of me not shooting videos is just, it's not because I'm stressed about the unrest or the pandemic. It's because like I'm thinking about decorating my son's dorm. That's mind blowing. It's just, it's like when people tell you stuff is impossible and you don't want to believe them. But there's like a little part of you that's like, well, maybe it will be impossible. And then you get here and you're like, what? It's not impossible. Like, I remember when I moved into my dorm, like my son was 3 weeks old when I moved into my dorm, and I went to a college where he was able to, like, we lived on campus together, so he was like, he moved into the dorm with me. But like, that's intense that like he moved into my dorm with me, and now I'm gonna move him into his own dorm with his roommate, and he's so excited about his roommate. And obviously we're gonna wait for the stuff with the pandemic and stuff, but even still, to just like, that's my real life, is that I'm trying to figure out like what kind of shower shoes to get my son, or what kind of comforter to get him to decorate, and you know, a dorm size refrigerator. Like, I'm just so happy and just so proud, and just, it's a very intense emotional thing. And I don't want to be on my channel crying every day, but like, that's what I'm thinking about. Like, I'm not thinking about the stuff that I think people might think I'm thinking about. It's like, my whole entire child is an adult and he's going to college. Like, I am trying to wrap my mind around that dream that is fulfilled and realized, and it is taking all of me. It is taking all of me to do that. I'm feeling very emotional. Feeling very emotional, looking for my son's dorm size refrigerator and his blanket, and you know, the conversations that we're having about his major and registering for classes, and this is a dream come true. And I'm just giving myself room to have that, like, privately, and just to be really present in those moments with my kid. So yeah, so those are the big things. And then in addition to that, and I'm gonna do a separate video of how like COVID has affected my business and my personal finances, so I won't go too much into that here. But you know, I'm thinking about this virus and how it affects things and how we can't be in person. And you guys know the first month of the virus, when it first hit, I was already at my bonus daughter's house, and so I just ended up staying there for the first stay-at-home order and a little bit of part of the second stay-at-home order before I went to Omaha to do graduation and stuff with my son. And so I would say, if anything, it's just pulled me closer to my family, because, you know, we can't do a lot of the stuff that, or I can't do a lot of the stuff that I would normally do, maybe to distract myself or not be around my family. And so I've just been, I think it's just really, if anything, it's just put me closer to my family in terms of like a major change. It's just like I'm spending way more time with them in general. And then so, you know, I think about it, but it's not top of mind. It's top of mind enough to be like the protective things that I need to do to keep myself safe. And then, you know, the global racial unrest has probably had a deeper impact because, you know, my son has experienced the death of like a friend who went to the protest. I live in Chicago, so when that stuff broke out, it was very intense here. I live in a neighborhood that was in the thick of it, and so between the protests and the riots and the looting, like, there were so many different pieces of this, and it was rough. It is rough. It still is rough, and there's a lot of stress that's around that. So that is a long way of saying that is what I've been thinking and feeling about everything over the last 3 months, where I haven't been talking to you all directly about much of anything. And because I'm coming to a place of, like, I wouldn't say peace, but I'm coming to a place of something about it, I feel much more capable of coming and sharing and getting back to doing this thing that I love. So I'm excited. So until next time, I'll talk to you guys very, very soon. Bye.